the time that we have seen this happening. And after the US Africa Summit, what we've seen, some people will say, will call it the diplomatic stampede on the African continent. And having the highest position in the Biden administration, visiting Africa, which is, who is Kamala Harris, who recently was on the continent of Africa. All those are signs on where we are with the US. I think the 21st century partnership based on shared values and common interests is shown that US is really so much in the commitment. Having a robust commitment where it has reflected the new initiatives announced at the summit, the pledges by the US administration of the $55 billion over the next 3 years. That tells us a very big story. And as you all know, Ambassador Counsel has been tasked with implementing all those promises that the US have made on Africa. And Johnny Counsel, a former Assistant Secretary for African Affairs, a former ambassador to Kenya, to Zimbabwe, Uganda, he is very much in knowledge of the functions of Africa, how Africa functions, and the stage where Africa is at a given moment, where Africa has the conscience and the cognizance to say, this is who we are, and this is how we want to be treated. And this is the direction that we want to take. In which Africa, the Africa also that has put systems in place. We all talk about Agenda 2063. And Agenda 2063, which is a system that we've put for us to say this is the direction that we're taking. America is not just coming into the continent and stampeding and just saying, this is what we're doing. We have developed a document here at Africa House, a document which we have worked with ambassadors, our ambassadors here. Let me welcome you, my brothers and sisters who are here present. Thank you. Yes. Which we have developed for the US to come up with the agenda of the summit. It has not, I'm on social media, and I'm hearing others just saying, America just brought those leadership into the US, the leadership from Africa into the US. So we gave them what to work on, and to say this is what we are doing. These are our priorities as Africa. We're talking of speaking with one voice, and what are we saying? Developing that paper. They adopted it. And if you look at the stages that they took in shaping this summit, it was what we had come from our own Africa House here, with the ambassadors, everybody who is coming from the embassies of Africa.
This is really wonderful, and I'm a first witness of the incredible work done by Her Excellency and by the diplomatic corps here. And many people are saying, look at the US African policy and look at many of the recommendations which were made previously. So they say high level of similarities. Although we wanted more points, but I think it's already a progress compared to what we have seen in previous administration. And perhaps before moving to someone else, Excellency, what are your thoughts about the diaspora?
The diaspora, this office is mandated to work with the diaspora. You call the historic, the contemporary diaspora, to me, all belong to motherland. And what are we saying? We look at them and say everyone has to be gravitating towards the motherland. And we're opening our hands to everybody. Irregardless, you came here studying, you came here to work, you belong there, motherland, Africa. What a good thing to see Africa, that Africa growing and shaping up with this leadership that we have today. Don't forget tomorrow, the children who are giving birth to today, our grandchildren and everybody else, will question us. What did you do? So you have a task. You gotta work very hard. Incorporate your other brothers who are here, who actually were not born on the continent, but some who are dying to say, I want the belonging. In the what does it mean to the belonging? You know, it gives you a good help. You know where you come from. And what is it? It's very important. And for you to tell your children after your children, where you come from, and very being proud of the cultures and values of where you belong. So I would say we have also to have a clean house. We got to put in check that which will make the diaspora gravitate. I will say we are open as African Union to work with you, to share. I know some of us who are here are already working in shaping that Africa that we want. So that work will come from the diaspora. And I would want Africa, also the US, to take it further. It is the first time that the US is amplified the issue of the diaspora. This was mentioned at the summit, and what does that mean? Let's run with it. They are shaping it on their side. And also us, we have to be found somewhere with what we have shared. We have the people who are working on issues to do with the diaspora, whom I would want to work with, to meet up with the US and say, this is what we want on the diaspora issues. I think I'll end there, Prof. Signé.
Wonderful. Myself, also as a member of the diaspora, I must say that when I always come to the African Union mission here, I feel at home, so it's our house. So do not hesitate to engage. I'm a first witness of this incredibly welcome environment. So let me turn now to Dr. Okaru-Bisant. What are the main opportunities from your, whether from the sector or the country perspective, that you have on the continent in terms of trade, in terms of investment? You have so many things in common. You're a Stanford person and a strong leader among others. So would you mind sharing a little bit?
Yes. First, thank you, for inviting me, and also Ambassador Suka-Mafudze for inviting me here. Yeah, in terms of opportunities, as you mentioned, we share that in common. Besides, of course, Stanford Trade, the AFCFTA, right? What does it do? It provides opportunity for African nations to come together, unite in an integrated form to facilitate integrated trade in intra-Africa manufactured products. We all know what it is, so I don't need to rehash that. Now, I want to piggyback on what Commissioner Muchanga, he asked us questions, so we don't want to end this without addressing some. I know you've already in the first panel addressed some of the questions. Within that rubric of AFCFTA and the goals of AFCFTA, it's mandated to reduce reliance on what I call phantom aid. Okay, phantom aid, reliance on, and also reduce reliance on debt dependency, which ties in with Commissioner Muchanga's concern earlier. Okay. Now, how do we deal with the emerging debt crisis, this so-called reliance on debt? Because it creates an opportunity. In other words, the AFCFTA creates that opportunity for us to reduce reliance. But this keeps me awake at night, right? In terms of almost looking like in other words, the African continent is between a rock and a hard surface, right? Because I asked this question earlier of my students months ago. what's the medium of exchange for trade? I'm sure everybody knows that, right? It's cash, money. Now, within the AU member nations, what's the medium of exchange? It's their currencies. But the currencies are tied to what? Anybody take a guess? To the dollar. The debt crisis, fundamentally, the reason why we're stuck where we are is because of our linkage to what? The pegging of our currency to dollar. So the FCFTA creates an opportunity for the AU member nations to actually practicalize what they had signed on to years ago. This was linked to the 1991 agreement that they entered into, whereby they agreed to have one currency, common monetary system. So far, the AU has the African Monetary Fund, the African Central Bank, and also the African Investment Bank. It has not yet been operationalized. But there's a possibility that that will happen, hopefully within maybe a decade or two. But they need to really move fast with that, because we're stuck between a rock and a hard surface, even within Africa, to be able to actually be completely independent from phantom aid, right? I don't want to go into details, but even within the rubric of AFCFTA, the Secretary General has done such an awesome job with trying to make sure that Africa and African member nations are actually, independent from the organizations that are offering aid for implementing most of the projects that are being done within the rubric of the AFCFTA. But really, you can't buy the hand that feeds you, right? I don't need to go into details to explain how that works, because oftentimes aid is tied into using consultancies and all within other countries, which then leads me to the next opportunity, capitalizing on youth, human capital development, which ties in with the question of phantom aid, because we have a youth crisis predicted, you know that. The World Bank predicted that if AFCFTA is fully implemented, it will raise incomes by 9% by 2035 and also lift 50 million people out of poverty. We're also talking within that framework, the youth bulge, right? So we have to utilize our youth. Within that framework, I think my brother mentioned that earlier, Idris, concerning SMEs. Inclusivity is very critical. Making sure our manufacturing industry is strengthened, right, within that framework. But it still goes back to the debt crisis. We're stuck, but we have to have a monetary system. Okay, then the third, within the framework of investments, you also mentioned how do we promote more investments, investment opportunities. I say investment opportunities not only from foreign, because the foreign investments through FTAs or whatever could help with strengthening capacity, but we have to include investments, regional investments, right, cross-border. But how do we do that? We have to start making sure we strengthen and use de-risking instruments, right? De-risking, in other words, insurance, investment insurance. MIGA does that. Afrocosmo does that. We have to make sure we start using that as a means to facilitate more investments within and outside Africa. The third is internal sources of generating revenue. That ties into the governance question, which is what I think my brother, who is Mr. Sila, he's not here, the ED asked that question. He was concerned. I worked at the World Bank, so I was shaking my head. I'm sure you noticed that when he was talking about the typical case scenario of projects at the bank. And this ties in, internal sources of generating revenue will actually strengthen the social contract between governments and their people. Instead of our governments coming here to talk when they're campaigning, promoting their policies, they'll be talking with their people. And the people back home will also, if they pay their taxes, will be invested in holding their governments accountable. There's what I call the lazy, constituent, or the, nonchalant constituent, which is what we have in most of Africa, right? We don't hold our governments accountable because it's almost like the political realm is almost like having a corporation where you have shareholders that invest. So I see constituents, those who vote as paying in. When you pay your taxes, you'll be more interested in what the government is doing, as opposed to the government relying on financially coming in. The government has to be looking to its own people to increase taxes, be it property tax, income tax, capital gain, whatever it is, right? So the fourth, I think I mentioned earlier, which is capitalizing on our youth, making sure but this is all tied in. It's sort of I don't have time to present, like a PowerPoint, but basically those are the 4 areas that I wanted to address as opportunities.
Wonderful. Very nice put together, and success. And speaking about opportunities, probably in Unlocking Africa Business Potential, a book that I released not a long time ago, I share some key trends for the one who are interested. For example, by the end of, by 2030, the continent will have, as you know, 1.7 billion people and a combined consumer and business spending of $6.7 trillion US. By the end of this century, Africa will have about 40% of the global population. Can you think about it? About 40% of the global population will be in Africa, and which by 2050 will be about 25%. A combined consumer and business spending also by 2050 of about 16 trillion US dollar, and some of the largest and fastest growing sectors, both in the consumer side but also in the business-to-business spending side, will include food processing, agriculture, agri industry, manufacturing, among other, and many of the sector leveraged by digital transformation and by Africa embracing the 4th industrial revolution. So we'll be happy to have another conversation on this, but I just wanted to bring some numbers to see that when you speak about opportunity in terms of trade, in terms of investment, so they are actually real, so they are not only hypothetical one. So this make me turn now, and I mention this because I know that my dear friend Steve Lande, who has served in the Kennedy administration, so we'll speak about some challenges. So before shifting to challenges, I wanted to bump you up a little bit, share some opportunities so that you will not be too discouraged after. So Steve, you have the floor.
Not only does Mr. Landry have the intelligence to have it in his last name very close to Landry, but he has unbelievable strength. He was up all last night, flying back from Zambia, and I swear to you, thank you, and I swear to you, no one makes a bow tie like he does. Unbelievable. So I'm pleased to be here. It's a pleasure to be here with the, it's a pleasure to be here with the co-chairman, or also the chairman of our panel, Her Excellency Hilda Suka-Mafudze. But in point of fact, we have never had an ambassador representing the African Union who has come here so quickly to become knowledgeable of how the U.S. functions and actually to portray. The idea of a paper before the agenda or before the meeting of the summit, unbelievable, and it had a lot of influence. I'm happy to report to you that we do belong to a private sector group for the AGOA renewal, fancy name, AGOA renewal, the strategic opportunity to enhance American, U.S. African trade, but it's called AREA, area, and so on. And we already are in contact with the ambassador. We directed the 2 meetings that she came. She works closely with the ambassador of the Democratic Republic of Congo and the ambassador of South Africa, who chairs the AGOA subcommittee of the ambassadors. And we hope very much through this coordination to make progress. What I thought I would talk about